Okay, Kevin, teach us.
Okay, I'm just an idea from this book of mitzvot. The mitzvot, we may have done it, but just it's always good to revisit or revise. Okay, so just so it says here, it is a negative commandment, not lo taseh, not to hate in one's heart any decent person in Jewry. So it says in Vayikra. Actually, I didn't even realize that we're actually doing Vayikra. Vayikra, chapter 19, verse 17. And should one man sin against another, he should not bear hatred for him in his heart and keep silent. Instead, it is a religious duty for him to inform the other person and tell him, why did you do thus and so to me? And he should erase the hatred from his heart. If, however, he saw the other person committing a sin, whereupon he warned him, but the other did not turn back, it is then a religious duty for him to hate the one. This applies everywhere in every town for both man and woman. So this is for like, I think this is, I don't know if we are on this level, but
Kevin, if you could have picked
it's,
one Turkey one, this is the one. Because we're not
I
holding at
know,
the
but
level today where we can assume
yeah,
that the other person deserves hatred because people are ignorant and they
mm.
don't know any
We're
better.
not perfect ourselves either.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is, you know how many Kevin's a saint because he always
No, no, no,
manages
no.
to attract in Israel. When I was with him in Jerusalem alone, and he went from Tel Aviv, he always got the most crazy people that he gave all the time in the world for Kevin, all the time in the world. And these
Son.
people were mentally ill. And if you got stressed or whatever, remember the one person with the photographs and the other one with the walking on Shabbos, and they just wanted to stone the other individual. Do you remember? You've
I know, but I'll tell you a story where you
yeah.
see Tel Aviv in the background. A certain individual who remain nameless, who I know, went to the US Embassy, 2 Ks from where this is here, 3 Ks from here. And he's standing outside the US Embassy in Tel Aviv, and he's standing still. And the security guards came to him and said, please move from here. So he said, I'm not moving, this is my country. So he got warned, ex-South African guy from Oak, and he got warned they were actually going to arrest him. So thankfully, he actually common sense prevailed, and that's mental illness. That's an example. How's that?
Yeah, no,
But why
you're
would
friendly
they
with very
arrest
special
him?
people. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, the problem is, David, I'm not sure what you're saying because I'm very good friends with Kevin. So what are you trying to say, David?
Um,
Just say it. Say it. Come on.
uh, no, listen,
Don't
he's
be
friends
silly.
with me too. It's an indictment on me.
I'm
Just
only half a kilometer away from you. Say it,
no, but
David.
he's friends with me too, so it's an indictment on both of us, actually.
No,
Yeah.
100%. You're definitely stuffing yourself. Yeah. All right.
Absolutely. All
That's
right.
fine. So that's
Sure.
fair.
I
That's
got out of
considered.
that one. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, well done. That intimidation worked. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Make you think very quickly on your feet. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, by the way, what happened to your take a lot package. It's
Ah, yes. All of a
it's
sudden, that.
disappeared. Okay. All right. Guys, I'm gonna share with you the second part of the Gemara that we're dealing with now. We learned obviously with Baribi about the problem with a Kol Vachomer, that it's transformed. It's not just merely adding to a planning of injuring or killing one's victim with false testimony. They're two completely different cases. The planning case and the actual implementation are seen as two different crimes. And therefore, it doesn't suffice to apply the one to the other because it's got a corporeal ramification with regards to atonement um, and various other aspects. Now, we are going to learn this Kol Vachomer in a slightly different way. Let me just give you an example. All right, so we're going to discuss the very interesting topic tonight of incest. Okay, Game of Thrones. Okay, um, so we learned in a brisa a similar principle, and this is in Leviticus chapter 20, verse 17. And what does the pasuk actually say? It says, if a man shall take his sister, the daughter of his father, or the daughter of his mother, and he will see her nakedness, and she will see his nakedness. It is a disgrace, and they shall be cut off in the sight of the members of their people. He has uncovered the nakedness of his sister, he shall bear his sin. So when we look in this pasuk in Leviticus, that's Vayikra. Am I right, Kevin? Kev?
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. So what we are talking about here is there's certain euphemisms the Torah uses. When it says you shall uncover your father's nakedness, it means that if you see one's parent's spouse and has almost intimate relationship with them, then it's uncovering the nakedness of one's father. So it's a euphemism for creating spiritual embarrassment. So when it says a brother shall see his sister's nakedness and vice versa, they're not playing strip poker where it's going to end at poker. It's going to end to poker, but not to poker. It's not strip poker. Okay, so it's actually a conjugal relationship, and it's got a problem, and because it's not allowed. But here, if we use this term, shall take this his sister, the daughter of his father, or the daughter of his mother, it's implying incest for a half sister. And what does it do? It introduces the penalty of kares, which is spiritual excision from the Jewish people, and it's imposed on the soul of a person in the world to come. And it also dooms him or her to a premature death in this life as well. And just bear in mind, guys, that most sins bearing the penalty of kares also carry the court-imposed penalty of Makkos, lashes. Now, this question of if lashes is an atonement where they don't get kares, or it's in addition to kares, I actually don't know. I must be honest with you, I don't know. Incest has not been something I've studied in detail, so I'm not 100% sure. Now, there are certain sins of sexual immorality that get the death penalty, but it seems that this implies kares and lashes. I don't see a death penalty here. So I actually need to ask one of the Rabbonim, maybe Lance, I want to ask Rabbi Goldschmidt or Rabbi Ran Cohen, because I always thought that a sexual sin of a nature of incest would get the death penalty and not merely lashes and kares. I knew the death penalty also had a kares component, but I didn't know that it might not be a death penalty and only lashes. Can you explain this to me? Maybe any of you guys can give me more detail. I know the Gemara, I just don't know this particular part in the application. Can anybody give me insights?
No, I know nothing on this. Like very little.
I think the whole thing with incest, it's like a thing. I know it's a bit of a strange thing that we've all heard. It comes from a point of view of a love.
No. Look,
There's a love element.
I'm not
Okay.
talking about the psychological aspects. What I'm asking is,
The punishment.
I
You
thought
mean.
automatically that for sins of sexual immorality, because one has to give their life rather than commit three cardinal sins, and that's that's idolatry, sexual immorality, as well as murder, rather than commit. And I thought it was sexual immorality, not just adultery. I thought it was the broader category. So if one's meant to give up one's life for such a thing, I didn't think that it would be as mild as Malchus if it had kares associated with it. So I just need
Because
to.
when the person has to give up his life is when he's forced to have sexual relations, forbidden sexual. Incest is not forced. That's also the difference.
No. So one of those three cardinal sins, Kevin's right, is that they say Look, if you have a single punnet of water and you're in the desert, you have no obligation to give it to your fellow Jew if it's you or them. If it's your water, you take it. However, if they say in order to save your life, you have to take the other Jew's life, in that particular case, you cannot commit that atrocity, nor can you commit idolatry in order to save your life, nor can you commit sexual immorality in order to save one's life. And it even goes as far as Sanhedrin to say you can't create a chilul Hashem of even breaking a minhag if it's seen as a chilul Hashem, and they say you Jew, if you break this minhag, it proves that you don't have fear of heaven. So even then, one has to. Rabbi Khan's spoken about this 2 weeks ago, actually. So all I'm saying is I thought it had a death penalty connection and not just kares with Makkos. But kares is very serious. It doesn't get more serious. And it is premature death in this world. So does the Makkos suffice to atone for the kares? Lance, please tell me.
I've just been looking up. So basically, look, kares is a very, very serious punishment, okay? So don't say it's only kares and not capital punishment. But it does say that in severe cases, it would be capital punishment. So it's not one of the four punishments, but basically it's not guaranteed to be capital punishment. Kares is of course guaranteed, which is quite severe. So when they say capital punishment in certain severe cases, possibly they mean the guy's been warned, or possibly they mean there's a rape involved. Maybe like when it's not a regular incest, but like a particularly bad one.
Yeah, firstly, you're 100% right, and that's why I did correct myself in the end, and I said it doesn't get worse than kares before you said that. I just realized, and I agree with you completely. But I did think that the implication would be a death penalty, but it does result in premature death in this world. And lashes are, in the book Krisos, Malchus is associated with kares-based penalties. And in some kares cases, it is a death penalty. So I think you're right. It's complex. Here we are talking about consensual sex with a brother and a sister. But in this particular example, we're talking about a half brother, a half sister, either on the father's side or the mother's side, because it says the daughter of your father or the daughter of your mother. So what the point the Gemara is going to make is as follows. It's making this point of a kol v'chomer. I'm going to get to the detail. I just want to give you the bottom line. Is that if you know that you prohibited and there's a kares penalty with a half sister and you get lashes, would you need to be told that for a full sister that penalty isn't implemented? In other words, for a half sister, if you get that penalty, surely for a full sister, even more so, you should get that penalty. Do you see what the Gemara is trying to say? And the Gemara is going to come and bring the point to say, no, that's not necessarily the case. And we're gonna prove it. So what's the whole point here? In the first example of the Gemara, we learned a case with Adim Zomamim, what they plan to do when it's in that window period for a capital punishment between verdict and carrying out the sentence. They're given the reciprocal death penalty, and that was merely a plan, and it was circumvented before the victim was put to death. In a case where he is actually put to death, they don't get the reciprocal penalty. So according to Baribi's father, you would say if they attempted to do that, even more so they should get the death penalty if they were successful in doing it. And the Gemara says, no, you can't apply that. Because if the logic goes, if you're going to apply a stringent penalty in a mild case, even more so you should apply the stringent penalty in a stringent case. And the Gemara says no, because if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, it's even worse. It's not merely planning, it's carrying out, and therefore it's got a completely different spiritual implication. Now what we're learning here is the same sort of thing. the concept goes, if it's considered incest, sleeping with your half sister on either your mother or father's side, and that would result in kares and lashes and malchus, then surely sleeping with a full sister who's related to both the daughter of your mother and your father, that is prohibited, and one gets kares and malchus. And yet we find you cannot automatically assume that by logic unless you have a scriptural verse that testifies to it. It's not logic alone with the Kol V'chomer. It has to be coupled with scriptural sourcing, either explicit or inferred, with Gezerah Shavas or Hekesh. Does that make sense in terms of what we're about to study? I'm just giving you the principle.
I don't think it makes sense, because I thought there's a general principle. You can take a lenient case from a strict case, and I think a half sister or half brother, whatever, would be a strict case, and an actual sister brother would be obvious type of thing.
Okay, so your first part of the statement, just before Brendan asked, is you said you can only apply a kol v'chomer in certain cases from a strict you can't apply. Well, this is what the Gemara is trying to say. There's two concepts, Lance, that we learnt in Vayikra. It started in 4b. And there was a principle called a dayu and a kol v'chomer. So kol v'chomer means in a case which has a strict punishment in a lenient condition, surely when it becomes a stringent condition, even more so, we should apply that strict penalty. Okay? By logic, you're completely correct. And the dayu is coming to limit it. So a dayu generally comes to limit the target area the same as the source area. Because one could say even worse. If in a case of a lenient case, one gets a very severe penalty, surely in a stricter case, you should get even more of a severe penalty. So what the dayu comes to do is constrain the kol v'chomer that says, no, even when we apply the kol v'chomer, sometimes there's a dayu where it doesn't get stricter than the source area for where the kol v'chomer was originated. So in other words, if there's a stringent penalty in a lenient case, the worst that can happen generally is a kol v'chomer of, in a stringent case, that same penalty is applied, but not a more stronger one. Okay? But that's only in a case where a kol v'chomer has two bases. Actually, three. The first one is it's brought by generally one of the Tanoim. There are 5 generations of Tanoim. So one of the Amoraim or Rishonim cannot bring a case against a Tana, or a 5th generation Tana can't bring a case against a 1st generation Tana unless they use a 1st generation Tana to argue with them, which is the same hierarchy. So the closer they are to the source of Sinai, the more they have halachic standing. So the first thing of it is, what is the standing of the person that wants to apply the kol v'chomer? The second principle is the logical deduction. And the third principle is they need scriptural sourcing in order to back up that logical deduction. And that's why even when I share the Mishnah, and I'm just going to share this with Lance in the group 1 second, and I'm pleased, Lance, you had this objection. Just let me share it. If you look at the Sadducean position here, which is against the rabbis, it says, for the Sadducees say that a life in the place of a life. So look what the Sadducees did. They not only said in a case where it's mild and you've got a strict punishment, even more so when there's a strict consequence, do you apply that? And they say, how do we know that? And they even quote a source in Devarim chapter 19, verse 21, which is the life in the place for a life. Because even the rabbis know that before you can apply logical deduction, it also has to be backed up with a scriptural sourcing. And in order for the Sadducees to sell it to the rabbis, they needed to do the same thing. We worked out that the rabbis say it's not good enough in this case for the reasons we discussed yesterday, but I'm just trying to show you a principle. Logic alone is not why we base a kol v'chomer on. In Roman Dutch law and South African law, and Roman and Saxon law, which is English law, and the initial Roman law, which also came from Greek law, which came from Talmudic law, was that your Ilfut theory argument is a pure logical deduction, exactly as Lance said, but it has no basis in halacha without a scriptural backup. Can you see that, Lance? So I'm saying, can you just see the principle? I explain it in terms of incest now. Lance, I'm waiting for you.
I don't agree, but I'll go with it.
Listen, there's a lot I don't agree with because but the thing of it is these are the pneumatic principles. So what the Gemara is basically saying is that if a half sister, either on one's mother or father's side, there's an incestuous relationship, it results in kares and Makkos. We can't necessarily assume that it would occur for a full sister. And what Lance is saying is completely correct according to logic, because logic would have you believe if there was that punishment for a half sister, even more so it should be applied for a full sister. Is that what, Lance, you're trying to say by logic?
Yeah.
Lance is 100% correct. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the Gemara. And the Gemara is saying it's not good enough because there needs to be a scriptural backup of the kol v'chomer. Otherwise, we back
Why
to
mustn't there be a scriptural backup if it's um, a half sister or half brother?
because it is, and that's why I quoted to you where it is. If you give me 1 second, I'll get it for you. If you can just give me 1 sec. Just hang on for me, guys. Can you guys give me 1 sec? I'm just doing a screenshot. Just give me 1 sec, because Lance is evidence-based, so we need to prove it to him with evidence. Lance, give me 1 sec. I'm going to share the screen. Sorry, Lance, I've had to get this in Coral Draw. Give me a sec. I'll take 1 sec. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, and I'll tell you the sourcing. Lance, you must know with us, we've got more sources than an Italian restaurant. So, it's in Leviticus Vayikra chapter 20, verse 17. Would you like to read it in English?
If a man shall take his sister, the daughter of his father, or the daughter of his mother,
Yeah,
and he will
continue.
see the nakedness, and she will see his nakedness, it is disgraceful, and he shall be cut off in the sight of the members of the people. He has uncovered the nakedness of his sister, he shall bear his sin.
Correct. So when it uses the term, if a man shall take his sister, the daughter of his father, or the daughter of his mother, is that a full or half sister in the pasuk?
Well, it's implying both. His sister,
No. It uses the word or, not and. If it wanted to imply, both, it would say the daughter of his father and mother. It wouldn't mention the daughter of his father and the daughter of his mother, both.
well, maybe the father's remarried.
Yeah, but the point of it is it uses the term or. Or. So, if it's either or, if it's the daughter of his father, it doesn't say the daughter of his father and his mother. It's looking in context of the brother now. If a man shall take his sister, and it says the daughter of his father and mother, that's a fully fledged sister. If it says a man shall take his sister, who's the daughter of his father or the daughter of his mother, what does that imply? Guys?
Oh,
Yes. Either on the father's side or the mother.
it has to be, or is either one of those.
It's
It's
an
never both.
alternative, Lance.
Correct. It can't be both parents, otherwise it will be a
Because it
full.
would either state, Lance, in the pasuk, if a man shall take his sister, because the inferred suggestion is most people don't have half siblings.
Yeah, they wouldn't
That's
have
number
that
one.
sentence. They wouldn't have that in the
No,
comments
you
there. The
wouldn't even
daughter.
need to say the daughter of his father or the daughter. If a man shall take his sister, that's his sister. You would then have a pasuk to say the opposite. You'd have to say it would also include. So the default position is you wouldn't have to say anything more than if a man shall take his sister. The very fact that it says the daughter of his father or the daughter of his mother implies a half sibling, one or the other. Otherwise, it would say the daughter of his father and mother. But then it's redundant if you're taking your sister. But it might say that if it meant to exclude a half sister. Can you guys all see that? Lance, do you agree or not? Because it's there, Mefurish.
When you look at the last phrase, he has uncovered the nakedness of his sister, ye shall bear his son. Yeah, I don't know. It's not 100%. The wording isn't 100%. It might be a translation problem.
No, it's not a translation problem because it's bringing it from the Hebrew. It's bringing it from the Hebrew itself. In other words, tell me implicitly where it would imply a full sister. That sort of detail is superfluous. It's unnecessary. It would just say, Lance, if a man shall take his sister and see her nakedness, and she will see his nakedness, it's a disgrace, and they shall be cut off in the sight of members of their people. He has uncovered the nakedness of his sister, he shall bear his sin. The very fact that it says he shall take his sister, the daughter of his father, or the daughter of his mother,
Okay.
implies a half sibling. And therefore, what the Gemara is trying to say is that the kol v'chomer of logic has to be based with a pasuk. So if Lance is saying even more so, if that's the severe punishment with a half sibling, surely it should be that same punishment with a full sibling. So what the Gemara is trying to say is, well, you need to prove it. You need to reinterpret this where it would include a full sister. In other words, we know that that's for a half sister, but unless you can find the inclusion for a full sister, you cannot take it for granted just based on logical deduction. That's what the Gemara is trying to say. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Lance, logic, you spot on. But what we learned there is you cannot make assumptions based on logical deductions alone. In fact, because if you look at Kimle B'di Rabba Minei, you shall pay the greater penalty. Why shouldn't, if a person burns a Picasso on Shabbos and it costs $20 million, why shouldn't, before he gets the death penalty, he have to pay that money and get the death penalty just because it's a simultaneous actually caused damage? Or why isn't his estate having to pay after he gets the death penalty? Why is it forfeited in lieu of the greater penalty? Do you get what I'm saying? So there's certain principles at play here. Do we agree with them? Well, we don't grow up in that environment in the sense of, but these are the laws of the Torah. There's Kim B'di Rabba Minne, but it doesn't make sense, and it even goes further to say in Sanhedrin, if one breaks into a house and they accidentally damage a barrel of wine, they have to pay it back because at that point their lives at risk by the owner, because it's as if it's a dead man walking, because if the owner finds them, that thief, most likely will kill him. So therefore, in the state of dead man walking, he doesn't have to pay for the damage. So there's a lot that doesn't make logical sense. I hope people don't become from and then when they start to do Gemara, drop it off. That's all I'm saying. Lance, I agree with you in terms of logic, but it has to work on the pasuk, and the pasuk is implying either either a half sister from the father or mother's side. So what the Gemara is going to come to say in the next session is that we have to prove that it includes a full sister in order to apply both kares and malchus, because it could be a worse punishment. Lance, how do you know for a full sister it can't be kares and the death penalty, for example? I can't hear you on mute. You're on mute. You sound impassionate, but we can't hear you.
They're saying, how do you get worse than kares in a death sentence?
Exactly. So what I'm saying is a half sister gets kares and malchus. Okay?
Yeah.
What's worse than kares and malchus is kares and a death sentence. And there are 4 different types of death penalty. It can get a lot worse. You know, the daughter of a bus cone is burnt alive. That can be a lot worse than being lashed, but apart from losing this, being cut off in the next world, being burnt alive is not fun.
Only if you're Muslim.
No. So we put hot lead down the throat. It's not fun. So what I'm saying is, who's to say for a full sister, it's not kares and a death penalty instead of kares and malchus? We don't know if the punishment isn't worse. What you want to say in a kal v'chomer is, if for a half sister this is the punishment, kares and malchus, even more so for a full sister. And we'd say you can't necessarily say it's the same punishment because it could be a closer blood tie and therefore up to a more stringent punishment. We don't know. You can't just base it on logic. So you need some sort of scriptural backup to know what to do in addition to the logic. But Lance is right in one way. In other words, if there's a case, sometimes we look for a leniency with a kal v'chomer, but always scriptural derivatives trump and supersede logic, always. However, if it's a case where we're looking for a leniency, we do accept logical refutations to minimize damage in many cases, but not to add stringency, Lance. When it comes to adding punishments, there always has to be 2 things: a warning as to that it's prohibited and the punishment as a result of that warning. That's how every punishment follows. Every punishment. All right, guys, we're not getting together tomorrow night because Lance isn't available. Thursday night?
That's fine.
All
Yeah,
right.
what time?
5:20.
Normal time.
Normal time.
Okay, so 6:20 for us, Arthur.
Yeah.
Now, Damon, Arthur is wearing a marvelous t-shirt tonight.
I can join tomorrow night. I can't join Thursday night.
Okay, let's do it tomorrow night. Pistols at
Yeah,
dawn.
It's got to be normal time, eh? I've got a meeting at 7.
5:20. Gav, it'll be 5:20
Yeah,
tomorrow night.
normal time is fine, yeah.
All right. I'll see you at 5:20.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Have a good evening. Be well.
Good.
Bye.